call us deplorable.
Basket of deplorables.
Bad people.
Not very good people.
Joe Biden, the media, and the liberal establishment mock us.
The credulous boomer Rube demo that backs Donald Trump.
Disgracefully hope for the president's death. President Trump stands with us, the people who work for a living, care for our families, worship God, and stand for our flag. And we're proud to say Donald Trump is our president.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Welcome to Fighting for the Republic. Glad everybody can join us. Thank you very much. Get right to it. I had the honor of speaking to Mike Closure recently, and we had to record it, and I will present it for you right now. I hope everybody is having a great weekend. Remember to keep your head up. Keep your prayers for the president in good health, good spirits, because he is the best. And we all really love this president. So I just want to get that out of the way very first. And now to present my interview with Mike Closure. Welcome to Fighting for the Republic. Here's my guest, Mike Closure from The Best Closure. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much for having me on. Much appreciated, and long time no talk, Iceman. Thank you very much.
It has been a while. First thing I'd like to kind of talk about is, how did you get started in doing broadcasting?
Well, I can tell you just as a quick origin, I'm over 50 years old, but way back in the day in the 80s, way back then, I took an unpaid position at a radio station called KMDY. It's the only, at the time, comedy station in the United States. And the unpaid position allowed me to edit tapes for commercials, read the traffic report, and meet every comedian you never heard of in the 80s at the time that became famous later on, even Robin Williams and many others. And I got this kind of bug about it, no money for it. But I worked a ton of hours, I learned a lot, and I saw some kind of a passion going on with people about enjoying what they do. All that went to the wayside for a really good sales career. And I can tell you that in 2015, when President Trump announced that he was going to run for office, it's someone I followed for over 30 years. His career, I've met him a couple times. I tried out for The Apprentice and made it pretty damn far. And it was a big deal to me. And as soon as I heard he was running in June 16th, I started a show on a medium called Periscope, which I'm no longer on. And that was, I believe, August of 2016. 2015.
That's all right. Yeah, you really put on a great show, and you really keep us informed. And I do really mean it. You are one of the pioneers, at least for me, because you are the first one with maybe one or two others that have kept us really informed about what's going on. And it seems like you have a lot of knowledge to dig deep into the muck and figure out what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. Not just dig into it, but I had a passion for politics that I think it kind of resonated back in high school. I was a little bit ahead in high school, and I always challenged my teachers. I didn't like taking reading the work and doing all the homework. But when it came to test time, I always got a B+, sometimes an A-. And the teacher would always get disappointed, saying, "If you just would have done the work, you would have had an A+." I go, "I don't do it for the grade. I just did it for the knowledge." Then I figured out, Iceman, that the way you learn is different. Each person learns differently. Some learn auditorially, some learn visually. I learned with snapshots of taking photographs. And so I was able to find a great dialogue with my, we'll just say my government teacher, that we had a big difference of opinion. I was a conservative, so I called myself, and he was not. And I found out that the dialogues were fantastic. In fact, it prepared me for the show 30 some years in the future to be able to do what I do and like you said, bring a lot of knowledge. So I started out with 6-hour shows. I started out taking people down a road of I would answer any question they gave me about politics or history of politics or what's going on right now in politics in a snapshot. And all of a sudden, Iceman, I was answering, I believe, what was 800 to almost 1,000 questions per 6-hour episode. And it became pretty tiring, by the way, almost like an athletic event.
It seemed like it. And, but it really informed a lot of us back in the past 4 years. Now we got another 4 years ahead of us. I'm sure of it. He's going to win. What do you think about the interesting political field right now?
So even in comparison to 2016, the measurements I take, one of the claims to fame I got for doing this was getting all the polls right within 0.01%. And that's why Alex Jones and many other people gave me a shout out, which made my show somewhat internetly famous. It didn't do anything for me. It's not a financial gain. It was just more of that's who Mike Closer is, or Best Closer Show is. That's all it did for me. And so now looking at those metrics then and now, clearly the main difference is that Joe Biden is behind a minimum of 7 to 9 points of where Hillary was against Trump, as an example, in most categories. And then you add in the minority vote, including the black vote separately, which could end up being anywhere from 14 to 19%, depending. Right. And the Hispanic vote is hard to calculate, but right now it's through the roof. The highest metric any Republican has ever received from minority groups in history. Taking those into account, Iceman, and what I learned in 2016, I think the victory is going to be more dominant than people are prepared for. And it's really the only way to put away what the left has done and silence them, and then start getting true law and order in place in these Democrat, I'll say, run cities.
Yeah, well, you can call me Rusty. That's fine. Now, when it comes to New York, what do you think the chances of Trump winning that?
Unfortunately, I still think it's slim. In Manhattan, obviously you probably know you had at the time some of the most non-conservative wealthy people that support de Blasio's and Cuomo's and Clintons and the like. And, they care more about support of illegals than they do care about support of their tax-paying base. So with the mass exodus of people, and when you say mass, I think there's 170,000 apartments available right now in New York. Wow. 3 weeks ago, I reported 81,000. So if I wouldn't have believed that measurement for a long time. Is that enough to tip the New York scale, Rusty? I don't think so. Is it enough to do it in California? There's something clearly happening there.
Right.
But the legal vote was multiple million last time in California. So I don't think we've shifted the balance of power, but I do think we're much closer in a Minnesota, if not flipping it, and in New Mexico, in Arizona, and in Nevada, things like that. But New York, I would love to tell you better news, but I'm still seeing it behind.
Well, there's kind of a little somewhat friendly wager because 4 of us say that New York's going to flip red. We're looking at basically more, well, if you even look at the tweets, you're seeing people clearly supporting Trump down Broadway. They're putting tar on Black Lives Matter.
I was so happy.
Writing.
Yes, very happy.
And you also have him on the Brooklyn Bridge. So there's clearly a Trump presence there.
There is. But here's what it's going to do, Rusty. We're probably not going to win New York right now, but here's what it's going to do. It's going to lay the groundwork for the post-Trump era. Something that was set up by President Trump's campaign staff, which I was lucky enough to eat with and dine with at Trump Hotel and had the most wonderful time. They set up an incredible complex that will be the future of the Republican Party. The metrics and analytics that they are able to dial in that the average American does not see is simply stellar and incredible. We have 2.5 million ground troops for MAGA right now. In 2016, we had a couple thousand. That's just a small metric, but the things that they're doing to make it electronic, to make it easy to tap into for anyone in the Republican Party that's running is stellar. And I think that you could be looking at a red New York, and this could be 2024, and I don't know who's going to run or any of that stuff, but I do think it's trending in the direction you're betting for.
Well, that's always good news, especially for New York. They need the help.
For sure.
Well, even yesterday, they had a massive parade in California. It was in Beverly Hills.
Yes.
It was great to see. And it's not only the first. It's
not just
the first one.
Beverly Hills. They also had some fights break out there, and then they started to blame the MAGA community. Of course, they had a 96-mile car rally in Arizona yesterday. You saw it all over the place. I've seen them in New York City as well. So you're absolutely right. The enthusiasm metric, if I could figure out a way, Rusty, to calculate that in somehow, that would really flip the scales. But I don't know if that's measurable at the moment, but it is something we're all talking about the last 4 or 5 weeks together.
Yeah, it's just an amazing, especially for California, because they've always been really kind of quiet. Okay, yeah, we're going to vote for Trump, but we're not going to say anything. Now they're just coming out in droves, which is just fantastic. What do you have any? How do you want to say? Inkling of what's wrong with Biden? Is he getting dementia?
So over the course of my show, over the years, I even played some funny tapes about Biden in 2016 to show people how awkward he was with children and people as a fun video. And I played many of them in jest, but they're all true. Now, if you look at his speeches back then, he was already doing the stuttering shim sham dance. The big difference now is that you can clearly see, like a lot of us see in our grandparents or parents, heck, I'm in my 50s, we all see those moments of your synapses not firing. Well, he's in the position where his synapses have completely started to dull. He's not remembering places he is on a daily basis, not weekly or bi-weekly. I'm not a doctor, can't diagnose, but if I had to guess, I would say that he's in definitely cognitive decline, a little bit beyond what his years show. So I believe he's, 75, 76? He's probably more in his early 80s with his, in fact, how he's speaking and his forgetfulness.
Yeah, exactly. Well, even when you see Pelosi already prejudging the election, which is stupid on her part as usual, she's already talking about the 25th Amendment. They're all wasting their time when it comes to this because he's not going to make it, and it's sad. I mean, and partly I feel bad for him, but in other parts, I just don't like him as a human being for what he's done. Like for his mental state.
I agree. Pelosi also said this week, Rusty, I believe she said that he will be sworn in after all the votes are counted. I believe I'm paraphrasing, but I'm pretty close.
You are. You're right. She did say that. I just can't wait to see the egg on her face. Me
too. I look forward to that.
What do you think about the great Biden tapes of Hunter?
Well, all of us in the MAGA community, of course, we're waiting on Bill Barr and other things to get done, and I believe they will. Never on our time scale. It never was on our time scale. And anyone promoting different out there in the broadcasting new media world, which is so important, Rusty, was not doing anyone a service by being mean or rude to Bill Barr or saying the things they're saying out loud is not being a good steward of broadcasting when you're leading someone down a path that way. Bill Barr was in retirement and only came back for one reason, and it takes time and it will be done properly. And I'm going to let that continue as is without judgment. I am. But we didn't all see this story coming. We knew Biden had ugly past. We knew Hunter had a very ugly past as a boy kicked out of the military, crack and cocaine, leaves it in a rental car, messes with his deceased brother's wife, gets a hooker pregnant. All that stuff did happen and reflects on Joe as a poppy, as a father. But we didn't know this underlying stuff of how deep it was. And now that we have actual evidence, recordings and photos, which by the way, disgusting, but I have found some cool things in them. Even through all the disgust, I have shared with my audience things that people had not picked up on over the last few weeks. It's bigger than people think. And I think it will all come out and will only mean something to us, Rusty, in the second term, because law and order will be the biggest prevailing factor. No more COVID talk. It's going to be completely about law and order, making sure sanctuary cities are defunded and never funded again, replacing those radical mayors and governors, all that kind of stuff. In fact, we actually could have arrested some mayors and we didn't do that, but we have the authority to do those things. In a second term, Rusty, it becomes a lot easier for our president to put the hammer down without worrying about retribution.
That's really true. I mean, especially when, and I'm hearing of there was 3 hard drives recovered, and the FBI just got a hold of another one about Hunter.
True.
And
yes, and that one has information about Obama, personal phone numbers of all the cabinet and staff, emails, and another 1,000 photos that are I don't think we're going to see at this quick second here, but absolutely another devastating piece of information. Yep.
It's just an awe. I mean, we knew that Biden had ties to China, but not this close.
None of us. And if anyone pretends that they did, they're probably lying.
Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to Barr and Durham, I did read an article, and I've been trying to tell people Barr was trying to decide whether he was going to do the indictments before or after the election. He was kind of betwixt and between on that decision, so obviously it's going to be after.
You're right. They were. And you know what? They didn't want to be the person that interrupted the election because of. At the same time, people are thinking, well, if President Trump doesn't win, this stuff will never come out. And that is by far the most incredible gamble in this whole process. But to me, with the momentum, the success, it was no gamble at all, because we've exposed as much as we could as a new media community. In fact, Rusty, without folks like us, me, you, and many others that we like and enjoy out there, no one would know about this stuff, because Fox is horrible, CNN's horrible, no one shares the truth. They give you bits and pieces of the way they want you to hear it. And then us, we speak the truth, we let it roll off. Sometimes we may not use the right diction when we're speaking. We may use an expletive here and there, but our passion shines through of sharing the truth. That's something that no other medium can provide.
That's true. And and I've always told people, I says, hey, I don't know everything. If I'm wrong, I'll be corrected. I'm okay with that. And other people really should be that way, because I know a lot of people are wrong that I hear, which is pretty sad. I think they're misleading others, and that's just going to cause a panic amongst viewers, which I have seen. It
does. It caused you to get canceled. I mean, you saw what happened to me. Success for some people is financial. Me, I'm retired. So success for me was speaking to as many people as possible. And on Periscope, we got up to 1 million+ viewers, and we were the #1 on Periscope until we were deplatformed. And a lot of people said I was controversial. I am. I speak the truth about Black Lives Matter. I've never stopped. I've fought against them. I've been hurt by it in many ways. At the same time, I spoke my truth. I did the same thing about the Democrat Party. I did the same thing about the most dangerous leader, Barack Obama. I've continued to speak my truth, and I'll never be silenced at all. And I had to find other mediums to keep this going on. And lucky for me, I had awesome viewers, to continue the process. If not, I'd be still probably with a bullhorn, Rusty, somewhere, still shouting out what we're discussing today, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you really took on some hard-hitting issues like the Las Vegas shooting, which I was just so glued to. It was just so fascinating.
It was fascinating. In fact, it still ties to fracking today. A big part of that story was fracking. And what is the big conversation today? Fracking. Why is the cost of oil and natural gas the way it is? Energy independence and fracking. And what do you think those in the Saudi region are most afraid of? Us being energy independent and not being dependent on their oil. That's why they've come to the president, the Saudis, and said, help us rebuild an economy over the next 25 years, not dependent on oil, because your fracking made our oil obsolete. And that's part of my Las Vegas story. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And we're almost going to get, I think, at some point to the puzzle that I quite haven't finished.
Now, did the Saudis suggest that, or are they trying to go to an industrial instead of an oil-based economy?
They are, and they want to do it on every level. They want to manufacture microchips. They want to, there's so much they can do. There's other minerals that they import. They've been buying from Australia to get into the computer chip world. There's so much they want to do unrelated to oil, and they realize that the oil runs dry, I think, in about 50 to 70 years, roughly. But economically, with the prices the way they are, they're going to have to be storing oil, and they're going to lose the ability to store oil anymore because everything will be full. So they actually had so much oil, Rusty, that they put them on barges around the world that are currently floating and are unsold barges of oil. That's how much oil they have that is almost worthless. They're going to pay people to accept it.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were paying 19 cents a gallon for their own oil to fill up for gas. 19 cents.
We could only be so lucky. Maybe one day. Now, do you think because of the Lincoln Accord for the Middle East are all coming to grips with peace with Israel? Could be part of it?
Possibly, yes. Here's what's really cool. The way the president did the end around, everyone said, you got to meet with Palestine. You got to use Palestine. You got to pay them. You got to keep paying Palestine to come to the table and get nothing out of it other than them threatening the Jews, teaching their children how to kill the Jews, and throwing stuff over the borders to continue to kill the people on the border towns that are Jewish. That's what their main goal was. So the president decided to go to everyone else who wasn't Palestine with Netanyahu to start the process on the back end. And now that they have, as you've noticed, 3, 4, or 5, and soon enough 9, 10, or 11, it's going to be in a position that Palestine and by the way, they shouldn't even be called that because there's no such thing as a Palestinian. It's made up completely.
Thank you.
That they're lucky to have a claim to land. They're lucky to be a neighbor, and with a two-state solution, they get a seat at the table, but they're not the boss of the table. And I think that's the best thing they'll ever get. And they get protection and all kinds of other things and benefits with it. And they're going to have the pressure put on them, or they'll end up being their North Korea. They'll be the pariah that's left, and that's probably a possibility that could still happen. But I think at some point they'll be squeezed into position. I don't know when, but I do see it heading in that direction.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about that. They're going to have no choice but to come to the bargaining table eventually, because they're going to be totally surrounded by all these countries who will recognize Israel, and them and Iran are going to just sit alone.
And that pisses them off the most,
especially Iran. I mean, so much has happened. You know, it's hard to really focus on one thing. And the when it comes to the region, how much influence does China have in the Middle East?
They only have a little bit left with Iran. They don't have any more gravitas except with the factions. I think they have communications with the pieces of Al-Qaeda and what's left of Iran and a little dance with Syria. But they're losing friends everywhere. They have ostracized Australia. Australia needs to make big decisions, because I have great guests on my show from Australia. They need to make decisions to cut all ties with China. If they do that, Australia has a chance to be the second largest powerhouse in 20 years or less. And that would be huge for us as the United States. So I think their influence is waning, even though their financial influence is large. If countries make the decisions to not borrow from China and look for alternative means of growth or money influence, which there are plenty other locations, including the U.S., I think that will make a much bigger difference. But I do think their influence is fading.
Do you think there's going to be extreme, harsh economical penalties towards China from not only us? I know the president will do it, but what about the Europeans for the corona?
Italy has the most to gain, because Italy, if you didn't know, certain part of Italy basically has the most influence from Wuhan. There's basically a Wuhan in Italy of about 25 to 35,000 people. They were commuters and have family living in Wuhan, and it was a big deal. They've devastated Italy the most, and have not done anything to help Italy. And Italy should have left the EU right before the pandemic been part of the Brexit type situation, from Italy if they could have. That would have been a perfect timing to do that. That's concerning, in general, of China's influence that way. I think Italy was the most damaged. Second, we're also seeing issues with trade. Right now, people have trade deals that are lingering. After Brexit, Boris Johnson can't get any trade deals done. No one trusts Boris Johnson right now. He can't make a good decision to save his life in any form. So even the president of the United States backed off trade conversations with him. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of lingering effects from what China caused and leaves us in a precarious situation. At this point, you got to go out there and forge some awesome relationships. And I think there's no better time now strategically to have done it with Australia. If Boris can't cut it, someone else is going to have to jump in because they have a lot of trade on the line, $30-40 billion that they need to get rolling on. They are really hurting there in Britain.
Yeah, with a lot of people that I know from they kind of are a little critical of Boris. And I kind of see Boris as a Trump. He's surrounded. And somebody has agreed with that because he's like 2016 UK. He's trying to do right and make Brexit happen, but he's got these swamp dwellers around him.
Some of that is true, but let me add something else something you may not have heard. If I'm lucky enough every month to have on my show the leader of the For Britain Party, Anne-Marie Waters, which I think will be the Prime Minister at some point. I don't know when, but I'm very, very honored to have her on my show for the last few years. And we discussed Boris a lot. Now, when Boris took the position, he definitely would have been the Trump of Britain or the Trump of the UK, no doubt about it, from personality to hair to everything. But his indecisiveness has gotten the best of him. And he has actually flip-flopped more times than he did combined in his political life. And it's really getting to everybody. For example, they just had another shutdown, you may have heard, in the last 2 days. You heard that, right?
I think I heard something
now
about it.
Yeah, it's their next shutdown, and it's a partial shutdown, but a lot of places are shut down. And he couldn't even explain it himself. And his own people leaked it so he would look bad. So yes, he's dealing with some things Trump dealt with, but he's also not being bold and decisive like he was prior to that position. When he was talking about Theresa May, you loved you some Boris. When Boris has supplanted Theresa May, a lot of people don't love them some Boris because he's not speaking and following up on the bold steps with bold actions. Because, like you said, maybe he's surrounded by the wrong people and he's being influenced in other ways. That may be true. But Theresa May had the same issues also, and she didn't have the goods to begin with. The truth is, there's only one Trump, and he's unabashed, unapologetic, and is only here to get things done. He's not taking any money for it. And you have to have that attitude that you're in and you're out. He's in for 8 years, he's out. Boris needs to get in there, mix it up, and be feisty. That's the Boris I want to see. If we get that version, Rusty, we're going to be great with our relationship with Britain.
Yeah, well, that's just kind of how I've seen it. When he first went in, he's just going to go in there. He's going to clean house. Well, unfortunately, it didn't work out that way yet. Because I know he did flip again, I believe, on Brexit.
It's not easy. It's not easy to be influenced by others, to be bought and paid for, to have things held against you. Like, for example, what I do when I'm retired, I don't care. If someone doesn't want to watch my show, it's okay. In their world, it's a little bit different, where you want people to like you and then you want that influence money, but then you owe something in return. I think there's a lot of things that came due for Boris that we're not aware of that may be coming due. And with those things coming due, Rusty, it causes him to make decisions that I know the people have not been fond of, at least for the last 3 months, give or take.
Right. When getting back to how does the EU are dealing with the virus? I don't like to say it. I call it the Rona.
The Rona, the China
Rona.
virus. We'll call it the Lung Pao Sicken. Is that better?
I like that. Lung Pao Sicken, or the China virus.
Lung Pao Sicken. We'll say first the EU should be abolished, and the fact that there were 9 countries, just so you know, with a referendum that they were going to put forth from 2016-ish through 2019. And Italy was at the top of the list. In fact, if you don't know, Italy in 2018 going forward refused ever to fly the EU flag and refused to show it on camera anymore, even though they're stuck in the EU.
Right.
So there has to be ways to get out. I'll say this, if President Trump was a member of the EU and he was running the UK, you can rest assured that the day he said we are no longer in the EU would be the day that it happened. And there's not one other leader in the EU that has that gravitas or cojones or the verbiage or any of that stuff to be able to have dropped that hammer. But if the others would have participated, I'm telling you, the exit of the EU would have made the area, one, they would have taken care of their own lockdowns on their own. They would have taken care of Rona on their own. They would have opened or shut their borders on their own. If you don't know how the EU works, you can free flow within the EU. You can just go country to country, don't show ID. You can have jihad over here and go to this country and have dinner when you're done over there. And it would have been a much better experience. I'm hoping that in a decade, we no longer have to say those letters together, EU. That experiment died a decade ago, and financially, it's only helping only 3 or 4 countries that needed the EU money badly. The rest of the countries contribute the most and get the least out. And that included Britain, which was overrun by jihad and immigration that is devastating them financially, and they can't keep up.
Oh yeah, they just brought in a couple boatloads of immigrants, a few weeks ago.
Yep.
When it comes, I thought Greece was actually wanting more than anybody to leave the EU.
They did, but remember when Greece was bailed out financially? Remember that big bailout of Greece many years ago when they went bankrupt? It did happen. That bankruptcy for Greece tied them to the EU for however long they're told.
So it's more like...
That's what happens when you take the money.
I see. Scratch your back, you scratch mine. Gotcha.
Yes.
Russia's really been quiet lately. And they really have not said anything, not even about the stupid virus or anything else. And any chatter that you know of?
No. So, you know me. I don't think there was ever an issue with Russia in 2016. After all my research and everything I personally went through to support the president, we do know this. The ads on Facebook, the ads on Twitter supported Hillary. Russia would do much better with Hillary in office. China would do better with Hillary in office. They both knew that. They both were posting stuff about that and putting a disinformation on campaign. The biggest lie to the American people was that Russia was somehow posting helpful messages. The only helpful messages I remember helping President Trump in 2016-ish would be folks like you, Rusty, and folks like me, and many other great folks we know that was spreading the verbal news, the audio news, and pushing out memes and videos as fast as they could through whatever media source we possibly had access to without being deplatformed. That's how I take Russia. I think they're zero threat. They have no influence on anything, and all the influence you heard on the news was BS on every level. They really don't care much about it, and I'm sure they try to manipulate our election here and there with some pings, but believe me, they had no financial and no voting impact on our election, and they still won't this time around either.
No, they don't. Putin did an interview not too long ago, and he's kind of laughing that Russia's being brought up again already. It seems like the Democrats use the same playbook. They never rewrite it, never do nothing different, and they still lose. Even worse. It depends. I guess it depends.
True. Now you have to admit though, the Saul Alinsky tactics that they had played for a long time worked very well. The savvy people, because of President Trump empowering us to do our own research, caused us to understand the Saul Alinsky tactics. One of which is polarize and demonize someone on something that you actually did, but projected on them. They were so good at doing that to Republicans that we always walked away with our head down. Well, folks like me don't do that. Folks like you don't do that. And we definitely know folks like President Trump doesn't do that either. And so that influence is now gone. That disappeared completely. And that's going to be reflective of this upcoming vote.
And all this time, it was actually China they were protecting.
Yes.
Then
correct.
You would think Russia would be like really upset with that, trying to be blamed for something they didn't do, and say, hey, this is who's really doing it. You know, we're going to help you expose all of this. But that could backfire too.
Earlier you mentioned something about China, and I want to add something else. What else could we do to China financially to make this hurt or to at least get our dues? Number one, something I said on the show in 2015, and I actually said it a month ago. Right now, we have an amount of debt to China, and I'm just going to round it and say it's $2 trillion. Some say it's more. Let's just say it's $2 trillion, hypothetically. Let's say that's what we owe. Immediately, we should stop paying the interest on the debt and scare them. That will send their financial market into a GDP free fall for about a quarter. They will devalue their currency once again. Their labor rates will drop. Famine will start to take place within 6 to 9 months. Then after we stop paying the interest payments on that, then we say you have a choice. You can either pay the United States $2 trillion and end the debt, which financially takes care of the debt, or we're going to continue this onslaught of telling our neighboring countries that owe you money to stop paying interest on the debt until further notice. And if everyone, Rusty, does it at the same time, China can do nothing. What can you do about an unpaid debt from a country to a country? Think about what you could do. Are we relying on China, or is China now relying on us? And that's something that we're fighting hard to flip the script on with our supply chains and medical devices and ingredients for all of our prescriptions that could be made in Puerto Rico or the United States. All that stuff is going to make the biggest difference of us holding them financially accountable, and we can do what I just said.
That's true. And, it's... we still have that phase one intact. We're still taxing them up the yazoo for tariffs. And Trump said
they're paying.
Pardon?
And they're paying the money, and all that's fantastic, and it doesn't feel good, as the president said. He's like, I don't feel good about the trade deal I made anymore. I don't feel good about my conversations with Xi anymore. You can tell that it's soured. But I should add this. If anyone could fix something, rebroker something, or makes this part of the negotiation tactics, like fixing Iran after the election or taking on a China conversation again one more time like this, it's President Trump, because he'll sit down with anyone, even his people that hate him the most. Yeah.
And, well, I thought it was I have no problem with it personally, because we're still bringing in lots of money from tariffs. And as long as they want to play their games, we cannot move to phase two until when they decide to behave. Well, how does this I did see a small clip, I haven't seen it yet, of Kim Jong-un finally emerged. Is that a recent one, or is that an old clip? Or is he still?
No, they're all recent. I've been updating everyone on that very well on Kim Jong-un. All the news you heard about him either being sick, disappearing, killing his wife last week, and all that stuff, where it's all fake. I'll tell your audience, the best place besides my show to get information on what's really going on in South Korea or North Korea or the Asian countries or even beyond internationally is Arirang News. Arirang News in South Korea, Japan, and all that give you the straight scoop, the straight skinny, and they do it in English also. They also have non-English. but it has been a savior in many cases to get the real info. When people were running around in the US and Fox News was saying, we heard Kim Jong-un is on his deathbed or potentially had died last week, and here I am reporting that he's at a farm and he's taking a tour of a farm to go over the famine after having the horrible winter they just had. And I'm showing live video on my screen. I'm like, who in their right mind is still reporting false information this bad? And I'm not even a cable news reporter. I didn't even go to school to do this, Rusty, and I was finding out real information quicker than they were.
Well, with things being so censored anymore, we don't get a whole lot of information like we used to at this time, maybe after the election. But that's the last I heard of anything, is he's on his deathbed. His sister may take over as the new prime minister. So I'm glad you kept us up to date, which is really good.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Keep in mind, for him to even announce that a female would take over, regardless of being his sister, he would be put to death for that, okay, in the old days. So even that conversation would have been death worthy. The fact that his sister could be in power one day is a very progressive situation to even be discussed in North Korean terms. So keep that in mind, how outlandish yet progressive that would be for a North Korea.
Yeah, because, because I've heard things that she's like top chief of propaganda. So that would have been...
They do have propaganda, yes.
That would have been a horrible prime minister to have. I'm glad she can't make it.
Wouldn't that be cool? Rusty, wouldn't that be cool? Remember back in the days, the Nazis had chief of propaganda, then North Korea has it and China has it. Imagine if we had like a court jester of propaganda going on here. That would be so much fun to run that department.
Wouldn't it? I thought we already had one.
Yeah, maybe so. My meme database, Rusty, is a meme 40,000 deep right now, and my videos are ridiculous. So I'm sure I can work in that department if they invite me.
Yeah, on your website, you put up some pretty good memes. I always enjoy the memes.
Thank you. I have some good ones here.
I just saw a couple before we started talking. So how do you think the election here goes after Tuesday? Do you think there's going to be more riots or?
Yes, for sure. First of all, why would the Democrats tell you, why would Miriam Bowser, the DC mayor, who is married to a Fox News female person that no one likes, who cheated with Hillary Clinton in the last election, why would she tell every DC business to board up their windows? Why would the Chicago mayor say the same thing? So they're preparing for a Trump win because they know the only people that pillage and do all the horrible things that they do, they don't protest, they loot and all that stuff. They know that would be the Democrats. You do not see MAGA people robbing stores, breaking windows, starting fires, putting the Klan with the tan swastika out there on the street. And I'm so glad that that's been tarred over in New York, and I wish it was done in DC on 16th Street Northwest. So I do think they're going to have hijinks during and after. Just like in 2016, they put a limo on fire. They destroyed a bunch of stores in DC. They continue to destroy their own neighborhoods, and they rob and loot from them. And I think they will carry the same modus operandi forward, and it's only going to make a better case. In fact, people that voted for that are going to be very upset with themselves more than they thought come November 4th or beyond.
Well, that's how I kind of look at like Chicago. You look at Oregon, Portland, even soft Democrats, independents are going to say, I don't like what's going on. We're going to vote for Trump. And that's kind of where I've leaned at Oregon going red. I know there's a lot of shenanigans going on, especially in Portland. I think the one thing a lot of us are hoping is soon that Antifa becomes a terrorist organization on the books. Have you heard anything about Trump?
That plus Black Lives Matter.
Yes. I know.
I advocate for CARE. CARE, KKK, Black Lives Matter, and Antifa should all be domestic terrors. It's actually a piece of paper that we should be able to have no issue with in the second term, putting those names on it, like you just said. What does that do? It does so much, because now all of our great, we'll say, SWAT teams and police and everyone involved with probably a new task force will be able to go out there and dismantle them like we did MS-13. We've taken care of almost 80% of every MS-13 member. Thousands in the United States have been deported or in prison or are going to be on death row in some cases from what they've done. We can do the exact same thing with Antifa or BLM, the ones that killed the police officers. And I'm sure of it after seeing what we've done with drugs, with all the stuff that we've done under the Trump administration. I'm with you on that big time.
What do you think the chances of the Insurrection Act being imposed if things get way out of hand?
I think I haven't discussed that on my show. I think it's been like 2 years since I talked about that, or even martial law. I used a couple cases for martial law during the pandemic that would have lent itself to be so wonderful, because like Kenosha or other places, there are times that you could call a more type of martial law where you really put things in perspective and in place. But the issue with martial law, as you know, the president in effect becomes a dictator, technically speaking, and he becomes any military he wants, and he can use the military any way he likes, and so many things can be done under that thing. So the conversation we're having scares a lot of people, and it gets dabbled around a bit in conversation to make people think this is what could happen. And I think even if President Trump were to have verbally said what you just said, Insurrection Act or martial law, in conversation, even to a Fox News reporter, it would be a week's worth of news, and that President Trump is scaring everybody, as you know, into submission. Am I right?
You are correct. I overheard, well, there's a other broadcaster from Justice Watch, Tom Follin, who brought it up, and I thought, yeah, I never really thought about it. So that's just kind of how I've come across it recently. I probably heard it on your show more than likely. I just, with everything going on, you have so many directions. So
True. Yep.
So I think 2021 is going to be a very good year. President will get reelected without a doubt. How do you think this is going to play out in the courts with, like, Pennsylvania?
Sure. Before we get to the court part, something easy the president could do with the coronavirus stimulus package. There's a few things we could have done different, but because of bureaucracy, it really damaged us. And I can tell you, if we would have simply done this little ditty, this would have saved everything. All you had to do was call every bank, would put out a note that says FDIC will guarantee loans up to this amount for every business that banks at your location for this time period until the president says otherwise, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. Then you wouldn't have had to worry about transfer of money to any businesses through the PPP program. At the same time, you wouldn't have had to send out any checks if you would have put a moratorium on tax. You simply just say there is no federal tax for the rest or all of 2021. That immediately injects almost 20% back into the system. And if you notice, Rusty, we're having the highest retail sales in history right now, not even Christmas time or Black Friday. So we would be running gangbusters right now. People would be profiting more, making more of their paycheck, and doing better also with the payroll tax. So we could have done a lot more things better all around to have done that. And we wouldn't have had to transfer funds, do fake loans that don't need to be repaid. But so much bureaucracy they love is what stagnated this process and didn't help enough people. So a tax-free year would be a lot more helpful because you don't have to transfer money to anyone to make it work. And then last but not least, Rusty, everyone should have the choice today, over the age of 40 or a number, to get their whole Social Security amount of money sent to them in full one time. You get an opt-out moment one time. If you take it, it's your money to invest. George Bush is the one who pushed that before. I agreed with it then, and I think that there's something we could do with that to make a big difference in the marketplace and investment for individuals and not worry about government taking care of us, well, for me, in not too many years.
That's a really good idea. It's especially, with the older folks who depend on even a second. I see older people working. Who
you're right. They shouldn't be. They're 75 and they're working like part-time at Lowe's, doing stuff like that. And they're, and that's all makes you feel good. But technically they shouldn't have been working.
Right. Unless they really wanted to,
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that.
With the court systems, do you think it's going to be dragged out, or are they going to just say nip this in the bud?
Sorry, I didn't answer that part of your question.
It's okay.
So, regardless of what we have on the Supreme Court being now a majority in our favor, and hopefully getting rid of Chief Justice John Roberts, which we've been begging for since 2015, and before that, when he made the horrible decision with the healthcare or Obamacare. I think at this point, it's up to the MAGA community, which includes independents. Republicans have to remember that MAGA is bigger than them. And if they remember all those things, we're not going to have any issue in the courts, because we should have such a dominant win that the courts have no decision in our process whatsoever. And truthfully, the courts weren't meant for this. We shouldn't be legislating that way, the way we have been. And we're smart enough to have fixed voting by now, Rusty, but no one wants to get it right. Don't tell me that I can't walk in a voting booth. They take an eye scan of me and they know it's Mike Closer. End of story. I don't have to do anything else. And if it isn't me, then take my thumbprint, my eye scan, and you can look at my driver's license. If I don't pass the muster, I don't vote. That's how it is. I mean, this is simple. They don't want it fixed because of all the fugazi stuff that goes on in the background. You learned about ballot harvesting in the last 3 years. You never heard that word in 1990, did you?
No, not at all.
Right. These are all the secrets we didn't know. So I don't think we'll end up in the courts, but I think the Democrats want people to think it probably will. And the president has hinted that it could, just to assure the MAGA community to get out there in droves. And as you saw in Butler, Pennsylvania yesterday, 58,000 people showed up in Little Butler.
Right.
That is something. And I can't even measure that metric right now.
That was breathtaking. I mean, especially with all the shenanigans Wolf is playing. And,
yes.
Steve Bannon says it relies on the Catholic vote, because your pastor will tell you one thing, your conscience tells you another. It depends on their vote. I think 30% in Pennsylvania.
So I like Steve a lot, as you know, and some of his staffers used to watch my show when he was in the White House. So I'm a fan of Steve. His brain he has an outlook on things that others don't see yet in game theory that I really enjoy listening to. Now, the religious vote, we'll call it, evangelical, religious, all that, was a very high number for the president. Today, Fox News, I think, put out a poll this morning, and I think it was in the high 70s for President Trump and a very low number for Biden. Pennsylvania is going to make their decision because of fracking this time, not because of the other stuff. They're locked in. This is all in. Do you realize that right now on Joe Biden's website, under his plan right now, even though he verbally just said he's not going to end fracking, it's on his website right now. You can clearly go look. There's a budget in place to transfer all the people in fracking to new jobs, learn how to code, or whatever they're going to learn. But they have money in the budget to get rid of fracking, and how they're going to transition people off of it with creative language so you can't quite figure out where things are going to go. I think Pennsylvania will be all about energy, and not the energy of just energy, but energy of the people. I don't think it'll be based on the religious side of things, in my opinion, from everything I'm witnessing in Pennsylvania.
I totally agree, especially during the debate when he started talking about eliminating fracking. That's like Hillary saying, we're going to shut down all the coal mines. Didn't work out too well for her on that issue, did it? So right. I think...
But here's what's interesting. If I can add to that real quick. Sure. Here's what's interesting. Hillary said we're going to shut down the coal mines. The coal mines, in effect, many of them were shut down under Obama. They lost about 60-some thousand coal workers in Pennsylvania, 40,000 in Ohio, 30,000 in Tennessee. All these people were out of work, 3 or 4 generations of coal mining. President Trump immediately opened up all the coal mines, fixed all the permits, and not one of them is currently shut down. West Virginia had the best year of any state in the United States. Now, they're not the biggest state, but they had the most profitable year of any state, period, for a reason. So when a Democrat says we're going to shut down something, Rusty, you better believe that stuff. And if Joe Biden said he was going to shut it down, you can guarantee it was going to happen 100%. Not 99%, 100%.
Yeah, Harris is also trying to backtrack what she can't do, saying, well, that's not true. Well, we know it's true. She said it. I mean,
that was a bad pick, Rusty.
Oh, that's
a really bad pick. He could have gone with anyone else. That was the bad pick.
She has the worst record on a prosecution as Attorney General in California that I've ever heard. And I don't understand their logic in picking her. But it's good for us.
True. It gave me a lot of memes and a lot of smiles, though. I have to admit, if I'm being selfish, I've enjoyed all of it.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty to go around. I love it. and I don't think it's over. I think even after the election, the memes are still going to come out regardless. It's just one of those easy ones.
You know, I have to say, I know we've been on for a little bit here. I think my show or myself has matured. When I first started out, Rusty, I was willing to take on everybody for a debate, and I did do that. Some of them were ugly. I took down Mike Cernovich, as you might recall, twice. And now he's back on the Trump train after being off and on it 5 times. One of the biggest liars in all of media. And I remember, my feistiness and debate. Since then, I've taken on just more of an educational approach of sharing as much knowledge as I personally have. And for as much as my synapses are firing, I do so much research for my audience. And I remember it all, retain it all, take great notes for it all. And as you mentioned at the beginning, I share that with everyone. It's become more of a spreading of that MAGA love in a beautiful way. And it's been a real connection with my audience. So I've matured through this process, still try to have a darn good time. But I think over all the other stuff, I've overcome all that extra feistiness and I got it all out of the system to go on and, just a pure support of President Trump and return to conservative, standards, minimums in the United States.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you very much for joining today. And you want to plug your show? Where can we find you?
Oh, my pleasure. Yes, my show. So I used to be on Periscope. I was the platform for being #1. I was on YouTube. I was in the top 5, the platform from there too. So my audience, being the best audience there is, sent me a note saying, don't quit on us. We're going to fund your website. And we started bestclosershow.com. It's $5. $5 a month. That's it. $5. I used to have shirts and all kinds of other stuff. No biggie. Don't worry about that. $5. It covers the expenses. We have a darn good time. I'm on every day, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to whenever I'm done, about an hour, hour and a half. Used to be 6 hours, as Rusty knows. And I put on some special shows in between. And on Friday, we call it Effin' Feckless Friday. And we have a darn good time with sharing the love. We recognize people that have had achievements and birthdays. There have been deaths of some of the folks that have been on my show. There's been so many things happen, but it's a big closer family, and I appreciate you all checking it out. bestclosershow.com. And I'm also on, what is that other medium I'm on? I'm on Parler as well at Closer Mike. So you can check me out on Parler also. So I'm also on Facebook. I think Rusty said as well. I'm still there. You can find me at The Best Closer right there. Thank you very much for having me on. This was awesome. Thank you, Rusty.
Oh, you're very welcome. I hope we can chat again at some point, hopefully soon. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed that great interview from Mike Closer. I'm going to open up the chest. at this point. And that will do it for another episode of Fighting for the Republic. God bless the President of the United States. God bless the Vice President, Secret Service that protect all of them and their families. God bless the law enforcement as well. Thank you. And military, first responders, and Border Patrol, Coast Guard. And God bless all of you. I really appreciate you. Let's just keep going. Let's just knock this out. Congratulations to people in D-Live. Rebecca 22.3, Lemons, Becca 13, Right got 9.8, and Blues got 8. Lemons, congratulations. So I do appreciate all of you. Please join again next time. And let's stay positive. Let's get through this. We will be victorious at the end. And we all stick together. This is what it's about. We love this president very much, and we support him with everything. We will win. Good night. Do appreciate you.